Welcome to Real Sense Now, where we delve into the dynamic world of real estate. I'm your host, Dawood Bedrosian, and today we are honored to have Nick Falcone, a visionary in Florida's tourism and hospitality industry. We've known each other for a long time, and he's the founder of NDM Hospitality Services and the innovative force behind Rentyl Resorts. Nick has been an instrumental force in transforming the vacation rental landscape by blending the comforts of home with luxury resort amenities. From pioneering the first branded single-family residential resort to forging partnerships with global brands such as Margaritaville and Jack Nicklaus companies, Nick's journey is a testament to innovation and leadership in this industry. Join us as we explore his insights on the future of real estate, hospitality, and technology. Stay tuned. This is an episode you're not going to want to miss. Nick, what an honor it is to have you here.
Oh,
How long have we known each other?
Man, it's going on almost 10 years probably. Yeah.
I feel like it's a bit longer than that too. But no, you're probably about right. So before we get started, who is Nick Falcone?
Who's Nick Falcone? So I would say first and foremost, I'm a father, I'm a husband to my beautiful wife and 4 kids, all under the age of 8. So we got a busy household. And then, a lot of people know me as the CEO of our company, which I'm sure we'll talk about a lot today, but play a lot of different roles. Yep.
You've actually played several roles since I first met you. I think before we start, it'd be a really great idea of explaining more about your company, your family, how you came here, why Orlando, and so much more. So I'm going to break this down for you so that it's not a big, long, jumbled up question.
Sounds great.
What did the early vision of NMD, your company, your hospitality company, look like? And how close is it to where you're at today?
So, early on, we always had the ambition to really start in hospitality. We actually got our start in food and beverage of all places. And I would say our vision of where it was to where it is today has actually stayed pretty consistent. We always said to ourselves, we want to be the best in what we do. We want to provide great quality service, cleanliness, and just overall hospitality in everything that we do. And, we've come a long way. We've come out of food and beverage. We're still doing a lot of that. Now we're doing hotels, we're doing apartments, and that, kind of value, that, key belief in who we are and what we provide to our customers has stayed the same. We've just gotten bigger, which is a lot of fun.
I love that because, you could have chosen a lot of easier paths. You're one of the few people that I know that has a phenomenal foundation in which you stand on.
Yep.
Incredible parents that have really set the stage for anything you guys want to create. And I love that your story literally has come full circle.
Yeah.
Because once I was first acquainted or familiar with your family, you guys were in the development business, developing beautiful communities on the residential side well before you got into the short-term vacation rental market and really changed the landscape of what that Four Corners area looks like. And for those of you who don't know what the Four Corners are, they're essentially 4 corners that touch 4 different counties, which allow for this one rectangle, let's call it, to be the legally zoned short-term vacation rental area in the greater Orlando area. There's 1 or 2 other small pockets, but this is really it. And, like I said, coming from that development background, instead of getting into food and services, you would think it'd be easier to just get into development. Why wouldn't you just follow the path that was already kind of paved for you?
That's a great question. Just to start, I have to say that I have the best mentors. You mentioned them, my mom and dad. I'm absolutely blessed to have them as parents. They've been married for 50 years. Very rare to say in today's world.
My parents just had their 48th anniversary. So we're catching up.
We're right there, man. I mean, it's such a blessing, seeing that, strong household, parents that really provide you with, not just guidance, but love, support, and really showing you how to do it the right way. So I'm blessed to have them. But, growing up since I was 5 years old, my dad, who's my biggest mentor in the business side of my life, he's been amazing. He's always really had that mentality coming from nothing. His father was a police officer. He worked 3 jobs to put food on the table. And he always had this mentality that that everything you get in life, you have to earn. You have to make a name for yourself. You have to really be your own man, be your own person. And growing up, that was what was preached to me. Despite his success and everything he's done in his career, we always had this mentality that we have to go make it our own, and really make our own name. And so when we got out of college, my brothers and I, it wasn't even a thought in our mind, let's go join the family business, because again, that'd be us jumping into the easy route, maybe just riding off the coattails of what's been done in the previous generation. And we were just bred, and brought up to think differently, to really think, how do we do it ourselves, and then maybe bring value back to the family business, which I'm absolutely honored and blessed to say that we've started to do that now in the later parts of our career. It's just been amazing to be able to now take what we've built and really bring it and connect it to the family business.
And I love that, because it allows you to stand on your own 2 feet. You don't end up hiding in the shadows of
Exactly
the people who really kind of paved the way for you, and you really brought this whole business full circle, because you're handling certain aspects of the business that your brother and father don't handle. And you really kind of paved your own way to make a difference and really change the landscape of that short-term vacation rental market in Orlando.
Yeah, big time. I mean, what we've done in Orlando and beyond now, we'll talk about that a little bit, because we've gone all over the country.
Listen, but I can't even keep up with you. So I'm hoping in this time that I have, we're going to try and reel it in.
We're going to catch up.
Try and create a nice little map of all these projects that you have going on.
We'll paint a picture for sure. But
go ahead. Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're perfect. In the early stages, it was really cool, because again, we came in with a problem that my father was having in the development space, where he was actually developing in the Four Corners at Encore Resort, which has now been very established. And the buyers there, they were saying, how do I rent? Who do I go to? As a developer, you can't talk about those things. And so at that time, I was working in food and beverage. I'm hearing this over a dinner table conversation about the problems he's having, where he's sending buyers to these other vacation rental managers, and he was losing sales. And I took, my brothers and I, who are my partners, we took it upon ourselves to really go learn the business, just by staying in vacation homes, really understanding the landscape, but then really took it to the next level. We created our own rental company, just kind of moved myself up to Orlando, took my whole life and brought it up here from South Florida with the vision of really doing something unique and different. And, what we did was really take that consumer experience and the owner experience to another level, through a whole bunch of different things, marketing, better owner services. But, the key to our success is we've created full service resorts, residential resorts. You can go into a community and literally have a 500 home single family that it's all part of a short-term rental resort. It's standardized, 24/7 service, amenities. It really takes it, to an entirely new level. So we're really proud of what we built.
So let's put things in perspective. When we first met, we met at Encore. At Reunion. Right. And Encore essentially was sort of like the top cap of the greater Reunion resort that wasn't developed. And it was going to be a standalone short-term vacation rental piece that was completely separate from the whole Reunion golf side of things. And at the time, it was probably one of the first, if not the first, development of its kind at that level. Now, there had been a lot more successful developments before them, and I can run through the list. And obviously, companies like Park Square Homes have done a really great job really setting the foundation, because they really went to understand who the tourist was that was coming to Orlando in the 80s, in the 90s, in the early 2000s. And that was your typical avatar of a English holiday goer that was coming for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks.
Exactly.
They wanted a place to stay. And many homes at that time didn't have swimming pools in their backyard, so there was a small community swimming pool. That since obviously evolved into nicer swimming pools in the backyards to basically what you guys ended up doing, which was the first time, and I believe it was around 2016-ish, where you come into this resort and there's this $20 million, at least $15+ million clubhouse with incredible pools and slides and gym facilities and restaurants, and nobody had done something to that extent at the time. And what was the trend that followed suit? Everybody else that came did something different or unique.
I mean, what's interesting, because again, that goes back almost 10 years now. And I would say that what we did at that time was very revolutionary. It really set the tone for where vacation rental could go. What's awesome for us, and what's really exciting looking back is that not many developers have really caught up to the secret sauce of what we've done. I think anyone could go and they could put amenities in a residential
Correct.
community. That's not really the secret sauce. What we've done that I think is very unique and different is the marketing of the product, how we position it as a resort. A lot of the things we did with an approved rental company versus 100 different rental companies coming in, and how to structure the associations and the legal documents to really make it where, as a developer owner, you're owning a residential resort. You can make all your profit up front selling houses, but still own a resort component on the back end. That asset class really still to this day is something that's very unique to what we do, especially in the single family home format. And so what I've found is that, our unique blend of being able to be developers, be hospitality operators, act in a brand franchisor position, have marketing, have technology all under one roof. It's that vertical integration. I find we're just light years ahead of anyone else that's tried to do this, and it's really stayed that way where we don't really have true competition.
Yeah, I mean, you see it every single time. Every new
Yeah.
development comes up. There's a simulated surfing experience.
Yes.
There's a
Yep.
a lazy river,
Yep.
and maybe the clubhouse is better than the hotel that you stayed at the last time you were in Orlando.
Yeah.
But I think you've disrupted the whole Airbnb model per se. And let me
Big time.
explain to you why. I work with several outfits that teach and engage students in terms of how to have successful or really productive cash flowing short-term vacation rentals. And based on their model, it's exactly what you said, which is create the customer experience based on this one-off, maybe mountain cabin style
Yeah.
property, or beachfront home that's maybe 3 floors or 4 floors or so on and so forth. And in order to create that experience, they've gone in and they've really themed the whole place out and stuff like that. You guys have done the opposite.
Yeah.
You brought all the amenities to one place and you said, hey guys, let's plug and play.
Yeah.
Here's a
Yep.
resort. Here's some incredible models that range from, for example, townhouses or condo hotels, all the way up to 5 to 10, 12 bedroom houses, if
Yep.
not more. I believe that you did have a 13.
We went up to 13 bedrooms. Yeah.
Why do I know this usefulness? Maybe because I sold a ton of your product
You-
over the years.
You did a good job. So
Thank you.
yeah.
No, but it really has changed. And I think that's the difference for what a lot of people expect when they're looking at these types of properties, and they don't understand. And many times it's a double-edged sword, the advantage and the disadvantage of having this. I definitely think the advantages outweigh the disadvantages.
Yes.
To be able to have all of the amenities at your fingertips
Yes.
really enhances your holiday experience. And in addition to that, helps you to save a ton of money by making your own food at the house,
100%.
having maybe a chef come and entertain your whole family. You can house, like you guys have done many times, whole sporting teams under one roof so the kids don't run around and cause some mischief late at night, especially if they were wandering around in a hotel room. And then more importantly, you can save so much money by actually not going to the theme park.
100%. Yep.
Because a family of 5 going to a theme park is easily going to run you a few $1,000s.
You not only save money, but you save a lot of sanity.
Yeah.
One of the
Like
things
that
I
one.
hear for all the time from parents that bring their kids to Disney is, they spend 5 days at the park morning to night. They get home, they're in their small cramped hotel room. Kids are jumping up on the bed, no sleep, and then let's go do it again. And the thing that I heard over and over again is, parents do that. They need a vacation from the vacation.
Yep.
And I feel what we've done is really created the blend of best of both worlds. And what I mean by that is, you think of an Airbnb product. It's a spacious product. You get family under one roof. You get all those benefits of togetherness, but you lose a lot of the things you were mentioning about, resort amenities and experiences where you don't have to travel off site. You don't have to go find what you want to do. You have 24/7 professional staff. With an Airbnb, there's times where you call, the homeowner, guy doesn't answer, or he's off for the weekend. So we're taking those togetherness components, that spacious accommodation, but we're blending it with the best of the resort world. Being able to come in whenever you want, check in after hours, having people there if your toilet's messed up at the in the middle of the night, water parks on site, restaurants on site. So it really blends everyone's kind of the best traits of all these products, and I think that's really what consumers have seen and why they love it and why they keep coming back. It really just takes that vacation aspect to another level. And I think the spaciousness, I'm a parent, like I mentioned, of 4 kids. Being able to go into my own bedroom when the night's over and not have it where I'm, crammed and staying up all night. 2-year-olds don't sleep in hotel rooms, from my experience. Hopefully others have better experiences than me, but I can't get mine to go to sleep. In a home, he goes to sleep just like a normal night, and I actually have privacy at night. I can hang out with my wife and have fun. So, I mean, having that component, I think just really takes vacationing to another level.
What was the biggest bet in those early years that really paid off for you?
I would say the biggest bet, there's a lot of them. I think anytime you're an entrepreneur, you're always taking bets and, educated ones for that matter. But, for me, we had a very healthy business with our restaurants. When we were starting rental resorts, I was living in South Florida, family, friends around. Literally I had just gotten married, taking my life with my wife, just completely uprooting it, moving, to Central Florida, which I've never lived in, going and working in a business that I had never worked in before. Prior to this, I'd never worked in hotel, never worked in vacation home. Like I mentioned, I stayed in vacation homes to get to know it and to form the vision of what we wanted to create. But this was a fresh vision that no one's done. We were competing when I got up here to Orlando, because again, we started at Encore. My father had already hired at that property two vacation rental managers. These two companies were two of the top 10 in the world. They were some of the best out there. And so I'm sitting there uprooting my life, coming and starting a new thing that no one's done before, competing against some of the best in the world. That was a major risk. It easily could have ended there and I could have just, really, it could have been done. But, I was super proud of the fact that within a year, we became the dominant player and we were able to convince people to come to our program despite, some of those lack of experience and whatever else. And, I think a lot of those homeowners are really happy that they made that decision. So it paid off.
Let's talk about your leadership.
Yeah.
How do you define leadership when you're building across multiple sectors and multiple verticals?
Yeah. Love that question. I'm a big process guy, so I think number one, and I think, I'll come back to leadership traits in a second, but I think that anytime you're trying to lead a team, especially a diverse team that has a lot of different facets of things going on, to me, you need a great roadmap. You need to really be able to tell people, here's what success means and here's how you get there. So I'm a big believer in providing people with a path, and really being able to provide not just the vision of how to get there, but the tools on how to get there as well. If you have great people, you got to support them. You got to put them in a position to succeed. So I would say, to me, that's number one, to answer the question. But I would also consider myself more of a servant leader. I'm always looking for ways that I could help the team, that I could support the team, empower them, and give them that, that bandwidth to be able to do what they can do, but be there to support, be there to, complement and collaborate and really just, support. But talking about our values and leadership as a company, our biggest thing is, winning from within and mutual success. And it kind of goes back to what I was saying about process.
I need you to say that again.
Win from within and mutual success. And what I preach to the team is, if the company is going like this and we're being successful and having an upward trajectory, I need everyone to feel that. If people aren't feeling that, then something's wrong. There's a disconnect. Everybody from, the lowest level positions in the company to the executive level should feel the impact of the success. And so, that's what I'm passionate about, is really just ensuring that people are growing, they're learning, whether they're succeeding with our company and growing to where they want to be, or they take that knowledge and they go elsewhere. It's all about just supporting our team. And I think great things happen.
After doing this podcast and radio show for 4 or 5 years now, it seems like, the more I talk to guests, the more I selfishly want to dig in deeper for my viewers, and even more so for myself.
Let's do it.
As much as I am just enamored by certain people's leadership style, I think what has become even more important for me is that mind shift.
Mm-hmm.
Because the difference of 2 millimeters, 2 degrees, has a trajectory that can change the shape of everything.
So true.
So my question to you is, what mindset shifts were necessary for you to go from an operator to an empire builder?
That's, a lot. I mean, to summarize that into a couple points, because I could probably talk for hours on that question, but, as an operator, especially in food and beverage early on, I mean, you're in it, you're thinking about, the guests, you're thinking about the food quality, how to do things faster, more efficient, how to train your team, again, set them up for success. Those are the components that, you're constantly thinking about. It's physical, especially in a restaurant. You're cooking all day, you're on your feet, it's just a very different environment. Coming up here and doing what we're doing today, it was a complete shift. I'm in an office, I'm talking with executives all the time, I'm fundraising, I'm thinking entrepreneurially to come up with new business plans. And it was a completely different mindset. And I would say the physical to the mental shift was one of the things that was the hardest for me, because I'm the type of guy, I like being hands-on. I like being in it. So not being able to be in it as much, and maybe not being able to, feel the details of what's happening every single day, on the housekeeping or the maintenance or this or that. That was a struggle at first. I had to really position my brain to say, you know what, again, empower, train, set them up for success, focus on the things that are going to make the company successful. And I would still say there's a balance there. A lot of people think that you're a CEO, you're always up here. You're always in the ivory palace thinking strategy, thinking fundraising, et cetera. But what I've found in my career is some of the best CEOs, they're still in the details. But you have to have that balance. Again, you can't be in the details to where you're taking away that empowerment. You're taking away the excitement for people that have to drive the success every day. So again, there's that constant balance.
You're also not so far away from the guys that are the front lines that you have
100%.
no idea what your business product
you have
is,
to feel
model,
it.
or service is anymore.
You have to feel it. I think no matter what, you have to always have a good tone for what's happening at every level. And I'm a big believer that your team will respect you for that. The more that they see you getting involved and listening, that's probably the biggest thing, because everybody has great ideas, and I don't care what position you're in. Some of the best ideas come from people that you would least expect it. So listen, because again, that's where the best things come from, is just collaborating and having a team that knows that you care about what their day is like, and that you're putting effort to understand how to make their life better and how to make the company better at the same time.
I'm speaking to the person that is looking to create a tribe, to create a community, to create a brand. Maybe it's a coaching service. Maybe it's a retreat. Maybe it's a mental excursion for better mental happiness and sanity.
Yeah.
Everything we're about to talk about in this next section will speak to that person that's looking to create community, that's looking to create a brand.
Yeah.
What I want to talk about is rental resorts and that branded resort model. What inspired the idea for the first ever branded single family short-term vacation home resort?
Yeah. So I think, again, going back to the dinner table conversation, a lot of it was immediately born just out of a desire to help support the family and provide a solution to what he was dealing with not having, homeowners that they were selling to get the proper answers to their questions. So it was really simple at first. That was what drove the creation of the vision.
That was the why.
But, the vision itself, I think, came from a few factors. When I stayed in vacation homes, there was lack of safety. You had homeowner with a key, they could show up whenever they want, type of thing. You didn't feel secure. There were stories. There's a show actually out there called Airbnb Nightmare, where you have cameras in the shower. You just have lack of security. So that was one thing where I'm saying, okay, we have to fix that. Number two, the phrase we coin is that when people stay in the traditional vacation rental, they still have to play travel agent. You have the accommodation, but what are all the things you're going to do when you're there? You have to go find that in your local ecosystem. And, Aunt Sally or Uncle Joe, they got to go out and they got to figure out, and play travel agent to find all those things that you're going to do as a family or as a group, and then lack of consistency. That was another big thing that I was seeing, was that, you can go into a resort. When I first started, researching vacation home, I stayed in one of the same communities. I stayed in 5-6 different homes. I mean, one was like a Ritz-Carlton quality, one was like a Days Inn quality, and everywhere in between. And so those were some of the big factors. We said, we could fix this. We can create a consistent product where people know what they're going to get. And what the pictures you see online is what you actually get in person. We could eliminate the safety issues. We can make it to where you don't have to play travel agent, because we're going to bring the fun things to the resort. And so that was where a lot of the vision was born from, was to elevate the product. But then as we started getting into it, we realized, wait a second, not only could we elevate the guest experience, we could elevate the returns for the homeowner. We could elevate their experience with how they perceive the investment. And then we could make a commercial product type of this. We could turn this into a commercial offering to now make it positioned for big developers, big finance. And so as we started to learn, the vision started to grow, and it really started to just go in, different directions to really elevate to what we're doing today.
It all starts with that first step.
Yep.
How would you explain your company to someone who still thinks in terms of traditional hotels or vacation rentals?
So I would describe our company as a brand and a management company mixed with development and technology. There's a lot going on there. But we're a management company, so we'll go out and we'll manage like a traditional management company for developers, but for this residential product. So for people looking to do a condo hotel or a single family home resort, we are the predominant player. We're the only management company in the country in the top 45 ranked that actually started in resi. We have more resi inventory than any of them. So I would say, number one, we're a management company. Number two, we're a brand. We've actually done relationships with a lot of different brands where we become the co-franchisor. So companies like Jack Nicklaus or, others that we're working with, Hard Rock, IHG, Margaritaville, et cetera. These are brands that we have some level of relationship with, where we're either doing exclusive products around the country or we're doing one-off resorts with them and becoming the actual franchisor and educating these brands on how to enter into residential, product or whatnot. So really, really excited about, that component of the business and why we, call ourselves a brand. And then obviously, with our history of development, we're developers, we've done that. But then probably our biggest secret sauce comes in our technology. And we've actually built our own software company where we custom build technology for this space. And I think that's, those are the four components of how I would describe our company today compared to everyone else that's out there.
I love your answer because it really makes me, scratch my head when it comes to hearing all these household names.
Yeah.
And, what it took to convince these legacy hospitality brands to embrace a completely new model.
Yeah. Yeah.
What did it take?
A lot of convincing. I mean, we were pioneers for a lot of these guys, so for example, Jack Nicklaus, first branded resi resort, ever done in the world was with us. Hilton Embassy Suites. I think there's over 1,000 Embassy Suites right now in the world. We are the first,
but I've never seen
first
one
condo
like
hotel.
yours.
Yeah. I mean, never done before.
And it's such a nice product too.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's spectacular. I'd love to talk more about that. But
let's go ahead. Go.
Yeah. So yeah, with the Embassy, I mean, studios, 1s, 2 bedrooms. You can connect up to a 5-bedroom. You saw the finishes. I mean, it looks nothing like a traditional Embassy. We're getting rates in the $250 range, where it's $100 higher than the average Embassy Suites. But it's a very elevated product quality, which you need in resi. You need something that's slightly elevated to make the numbers make sense, from a standpoint of what you drive and rate. I would say, big time elevation. Also, what's really cool about the Embassy is that we built this amazing amenity outside of it where we have, a tiki hut that you could fit 400 people under, massive bar and food space, little water park thing for the kids with pools, cabanas. I mean, it's absolutely spectacular. So I feel like people coming to that product, they're going to, if you're a big time Embassy goer and you've stayed at a lot of them, you'll come here and you think you're at something completely different.
And you're missing another really important factor that you're not sharing with our guests.
Okay. Help me out here.
What else are you adding there right beside the tiki hut that's going to change how people not only visit, but vacation there as well too?
So I'm assuming I know the answer to this. We're doing a lot. So I might actually throw out the wrong answer because we're doing so much development.
Okay. I'll guide you back to the right one.
But yeah, no, I think what you're going at is we're building a very large conference convention center.
Absolutely.
So we're looking to do about 50,000 square feet of convention space. Again, something very unique. People haven't necessarily historically looked at, let me stay in a vacation home product while I go to a corporate convention, but what we've found with rental resorts, anywhere from 20 to 40% of our business comes from corporate groups. And so we've completely debunked that thought process. What we found is that corporate groups love it. They love being together, corporate retreats. You can put people under one roof. I mean, it's an absolute spectacular product for people that like to, do those bonding experiences as a company.
And still have the privacy of maybe uniquely traveling with your family at the same time.
Exactly.
While doing a little work thing.
Yeah.
While you're on vacation.
Creates great flexibility. Yep.
I love workations.
Yes.
That's all I seem to do all the time.
Yeah. We see people doing that, especially now that people can work remote a lot more.
I know, right?
People come and stay at our resort for 3 months and just work from there.
Listen, your resorts really took the best, sharpest right turn 6 weeks after COVID when DeSantis said, open up vacation rentals.
Yeah, we were blessed.
And you guys were up to like what? 100% occupancy?
Oh yeah. I mean, hotels were all shut down, and which made sense. I mean, at that time, everyone was afraid. No one wanted to be in common areas, hotel elevators with people. I mean, that just wasn't happening. But people wanted to get out. Obviously, we all went through COVID. We all were stuck, and just, not feeling great about being in the house all day. So to be able to give people the opportunity to go vacation and have that privacy and, experience, being around people as much as you want. But if you didn't want to, you had your private home. And I think that just was an amazing product coming out of COVID.
there's so many different travel experiences that one can experience today,
Yeah.
whether you're staying at a tree house or whether you're going to, a beautiful resort, or you're doing a retreat in the jungle, or whatever the case may be.
Yep.
Why do you think branded residential resorts is the future of travel?
So number one, I think that if you look at the numbers, there's just a lot more multi-generational travel, larger group travel. Yeah, I think with communication, with the different types of ways that you can get places today, it's become a lot easier for larger groups to come together and take trips. So, the number one, the togetherness component, of being able to put everyone under one roof, the affordability component, because typically renting one house versus, the equivalent number of bedrooms in a hotel, usually it's more economical to rent a
Correct.
house. So I would say that, these are all factors that have really, assisted with that mindset. And I think that's where the trends are going of, again, affordability, togetherness, but not sacrificing a lot of the things you get at a traditional resort. And that's where it really comes together. But what's also amazing, if you look at it on the investor side, I think this is where the world's going too. The interest rates are higher and higher. Construction costs are, astronomical right now. So if you ask most developers, most financiers, financing a traditional hotel in today's world is very difficult. A new build hotel is like a 10 out of 10 in difficulty in today's world. And so being able to do a residential product where, you're not having to top off a building and spend, hundreds of millions of dollars in risk to say, let me go put all this money up front and hope that, it works on the back end. I'll go sell it 5 years down the road, make some money. That's the hotel model, right? A lot of risk involved. Housing model, you could be, going out minimal financing, putting a revolver on it, where you're bringing in money as needed for construction, selling as you go with even flow, construction to sales. And your capital stack is much smaller. You get all of your return up front, and you still own a resort on the back end. So I believe that number one, consumers are going to really demand this because of all the reasons I mentioned. But I think developers are really going to demand this because it really helps them get projects done. It helps them to finance their projects. And even if you're doing a traditional hotel, blending it with resi allows you to get much better rates of return. So I think this is the trend of where the world's going in travel.
But you're in so many different markets, and it's hard enough to become the expert of one market.
Yeah.
How have you managed to balance brand consistency with local authenticity across all your different destinations?
It's a great challenge. I don't want to make it sound like it's easy. It's not. I believe number one, from an operations perspective, going back to my operations mindset, we believe in clustering. So if I'm going to manage something, I want to have it in a clustered environment. I don't want to take one property out in Alaska where, let's say, everything else is over here, because that's a recipe for disaster. Anyone that's an operator knows that you have to grow in a very measured way, because people is really your best resource, and it's very hard to train people all over the world at the same time in different environments. So I'm a big believer operationally stay clustered. When it comes to design, architecture, more the branding and franchisor side of what we do, it translates broader, a lot easier than operations does. So to keep that authenticity, we study the local ecosystems that we want to develop in. We, a lot of the time, will partner with a local developer too. We don't develop everything that we do. We work with a lot of outside developers because, again, they know those local ecosystems and they can help guide on a lot of that local authenticity that we're looking for, because we do want to have that flair of what people expect to come and see in that local market. So I would say partnerships is a big component, researching those markets and really getting in there, being hands-on, understanding the culture, living there for a period of time and really getting ingrained. These are all things that really help us guide the product. And then, just kind of staying true to our underwriting principles, and knowing what works, what doesn't, I think really helps us to stay within the proper lane so that we're being entrepreneurial, but not going so crazy where, we're taking risks all the time with new things.
The vacation rental market is cyclical, like all real estate assets.
Yep.
But it has a different sensitivity depending on its geographic location,
Yeah.
what's happening in the economy,
Big time.
interest rates, inflation, construction costs, what cities are trending or not trending when it comes to tourism. We've definitely seen a shift in the overall real estate market
Big time.
throughout the country. And I'm sure you felt it in different markets that you're in. And I'm sure now is a very challenging time, just like it is for every other developer, every other resort owner, hotelier, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
Are vacation rentals still a good buy in today's world?
I think it's a great buy. Definitely a lot of components to the question I want to hit on. We talked to a lot of developers, a lot of builders, and everyone's saying the same thing, that from a builder developer perspective, the velocity of sales in this type of product is way down. And I think everyone is kind of experiencing that. There are markets where that's not the case, but I would say majority of the U.S. domestically, that's the case. We were actually talking with some of the bigger builders in the country the other day, where they were saying that their sales on vacation home product was down about 70% so far this year. So I believe that that's where the trend is at the moment. But to your point, it's very cyclical. And why I believe that's a good thing is because obviously when sales are slow, prices drop. So from a buyer perspective, I think it's a great time to get in, because you're going to get some of the best buys you'll ever have in this market. Now, I think there's a lot of people in my age range and, around my age range, that at the same time are looking at interest rates and they're saying, oh my God, interest rates at, this and that, this is deterring us from buying. But, we had historical lows. Most people, let's say my parents' age range, they're used to 7, 8, 10% interest rates or whatnot. 14. I mean, that's not, I think we got a little spoiled with,
absolutely.
the threes and whatever, for a few years, where I think that over time that mindset will shift a bit. And, I think that you'll also see probably a little bit more of a propensity of people going after smaller product, less expensive, more entry level at the moment. But I would say if you're a buyer right now, this is the best time to buy.
I couldn't agree with you more. And I definitely think, in spite of the shifts that are going on, I've seen some really great deals. I've seen some developers give away $130,000 in incentives. And these are national home builders.
Yeah.
I know what, incentives and offerings you guys have as well too.
They're doing big interest rate buy downs too.
Exactly.
I mean, it's amazing what's happening right now. Yeah.
And it's really changing the landscape or the shape of what this industry looks like. But I definitely want to add something else to it. You see, the thing is, there's two types of people when it comes to buyers of this type of product. They are true investors.
Yeah.
And I'll be the first person to tell you, if you're not buying this for as a lifestyle asset, and I'm going to define what it is in just a second. I think there are other investments that you should consider that will generate better cash flow for you. That is consistent.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're looking for a lifestyle asset, it has to have 3 components. Component number 1, it has to be a property that's managed.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
You cannot self-manage it because it's active income, not passive income.
100%.
And we're trying to get a lifestyle asset that is used for passive income. It has to be rented. That means it has to generate income.
Yes, agreed.
And the third most important part, which probably overarches all of the others in my opinion, especially in today's market, is you have to use it and enjoy it.
Yeah. Yep. Agreed.
And if you can have all 3 of those things, don't worry about refinancing.
Yeah.
The rates will go down eventually.
I agree.
Right?
Yep.
I think that the whole economic effort that's going on right now with the new administration is trying to get that under control, because real estate is one of the greatest drivers for our economy.
Yeah. Yep. Well, that and not to go political, but when you look at our president, he's a developer. So if there's one thing I could say with pretty decent confidence, I would say he's probably looking at ways to assist developers, whether that's a good thing or bad thing to some people. That's up for definition. But I would say I'm very confident that development interest rates will be adjusted in a way that's going to be pro-business friendly during the administration. So I'm feeling good about that. But I agree 100% with all the components you brought up. The ability for people not just to use it as an investment, make money, but have the ability to have something that they can enjoy, I think is key, for this product. I would also say that, it's probably better to look at, new development or buying from a developer, because again, what typically developers do is, they're going to be at the lowest prices when they're first selling, and they're doing price increases throughout. Absolutely. So if you're one of those entry level people, you're getting the best deal. And Absolutely. The chances of having appreciation are virtually, they're pretty much locked in from that perspective, minus any kind of major shift in the economy or big recession type of thing. You're going to have it where if you buy early on with the new development, you're going to have upside. So I would say, you have to look for the right buys, the right timing, and all the components you mentioned really make it a great investment.
Let's dig in deeper before we kind of change gears here.
Definitely.
I love that you're actually pulling the curtains back in terms of what actually makes a successful short-term vacation rental purchase. So let's go through them.
Yeah.
Buy early.
Yes.
Definitely take advantage of early pricing. You will ride the wave. You more than likely, by the time the development is done or your house is done, it would have appreciated a significant amount of time over time.
Just to hit on that for 1 second, I mean, there are communities we've worked with developers where I've seen the price increases from the first home sale to the last one go up over 100%.
Oh,
And this is 2-3 year period of time.
Yeah, I've seen that too.
Mind blowing.
So that's a key aspect.
Yep.
Jump in early, work with the right team.
Oh yeah.
Let them make sure that they understand the product. Don't just go for the cheapest priced home.
That's the last thing you want to
Yeah,
do.
exactly. Yeah. You literally want to go into a community and get a feel for what's the best performing home, whether it's a 5-bedroom, a 10-bedroom, a 12-bedroom. There's a couple that are in between that just don't work as well as some of the smaller ones.
Yes.
Or some of the better ones.
You hit it right on the head. Those in-betweeners are the toughest ones.
Yeah.
And there's tools out there though, like AirDNA, for example. I would recommend anyone that's looking to invest, go on AirDNA. You could find out what products are, how they're performing, what's working better than others, what bedroom counts are the best. There's just amazing tools out there for buyers now to get really educated so that you're not just, taking a chance. Yeah.
And you're not listening to a property manager whose job is to basically fluff up a performa to promise you the world, and then when you actually get into that arrangement with them, they're not delivering.
Exactly.
Which is what has happened many times, unless you're working with reputable property managers. There's another key aspect that a lot of people overlook. Well, it's the same one divided into two parts, which is the upgrading component when you actually purchase a new home. And I will get into the difference between a resale or a new home, because I think this is really imperative for people to understand this when they're making this decision.
100%.
I say upgrade your kitchens, upgrade your bathrooms, upgrade your flooring. When it comes to furniture packages, listen to me carefully. Do not cut corners on creating the greatest guest experience in your home.
Yeah.
I'm here to share ideas with you. James Bond is coming out. 007, huge fan. A beautiful idea, if you do what a designer friend of mine did, was just get 2 vintage Rolls-Royce cars and convert them into the seats for the movie theater room.
That's really cool. Yeah.
They brought a 54-foot helicopter retired from Afghanistan, cut it up into different pieces. The kids could walk into the tail and use that part in the garage as a game flight simulator.
Yeah.
The front part were bunk beds, for example.
That's spectacular.
There's another theme that was, nautical, but they really created, the kids sleeping in a boat as the bed in the room versus anything else. There's other themes that people have used. I think try and stay away from your typical Mickey Mouse, Harry Potter type of IP stuff and go with something a little bit more generic, but in the sense of broader theme, not generic in terms of
unique. I hear what you're saying.
Unique is probably a better word.
More appealing to a broader audience, I would say. Because we see a lot of the time, we have some theme like Disney and those type of rooms, but they appeal to a youth audience, right? So if you have a corporate group coming in, they're not really happy about being in the Mickey room, right?
I don't want to sleep in the princess bed.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
I love Elsa and everything, but seriously,
not
we're
so
not
much.
Staying there together.
Exactly, and especially bunk beds and whatever else, right? So I'm a big believer in what you're saying too. Decorate in a way that is really unique, really elevated, but broader audience appeal. And I also think you hit it right on the head. What do people really love when they come? They love a great kitchen. They love a great pool, especially here in Florida. It's funny because I live in one of the communities, and I kid you not, from 7 a.m. to midnight, people are in the pool.
Yeah,
and I'm saying to myself, how do these people stay out all day long? But they're coming from places where you can't do that, right? So the pool is key, the kitchen is key. Games and fun experiences in the house, absolutely key. Those are the areas you really want to invest.
So being in the business, I know my answer. I'm really curious to hear yours.
Yeah.
What would you recommend to a new buyer looking to jump into this market? Do you recommend that they buy a resale, or do you recommend that they buy a new home? What are the pros and cons?
So going back to what I was saying, if the opportunity in the market you're looking for has new developer sales, I would recommend getting in early, like we were saying, because of the appreciation and the typical aspect of a developer doing price increases throughout the development. If you're very fixated on a specific market and that's not available, then I think you're looking at what is the best performing products in the market, and that's where I would use some of the tools like the one I mentioned, an AirDNA for an example, where you can go and you could really see what are the best performing products, but also how saturated are those products? Has it reached a point where there's just too many of them, and it's a supply and demand issue? So I would say you want something that's a little bit more unique from that perspective. And going back to what you had said earlier, when we did Encore Resort, we did, up to 13 bedroom houses. I think a lot of people thought we were crazy. Like who's coming and renting a 13 bedroom? That was the best performing product, not just because of the fact that you could put a ton of people under one roof and it was a great house, but because we had scarcity of it. When you looked at 8 bedrooms, as an example, we probably sold in that community over 200 of them. 13s, we had less than 10. So when you look at that lack of inventory or whatnot and that uniqueness of the product, this thing was always rented, and it was always rented at an amazingly high rate, because there was less competition for that. So I would say that's a huge component of what someone wants to look for, is that supply of the type of inventory you're looking to buy in that market.
My client had probably the most successful home on the opposite end of the spectrum. It was the only 4 bedroom bungalow style
Exactly.
that
Yep.
was there. You know
Yep.
which one it is.
Yep.
Um, I definitely think that there is something to be said about buying a resale that 99% of the time comes with all the furniture.
Yes.
But in my experience, I've also brought clients out to resales and brand new homes.
Mhm.
And I would tell you 9 out of 10 times they opted for the brand new home
Yeah.
that was a blank canvas that they could go out and spend the money
Yep.
and create something unique for themselves rather than the other way around.
It depends on the buyer. We get a lot of international clientele where I find they want something a little bit more turnkey. I think based on the nature of not necessarily being local and being able to be on top of it all the time. So I think, there's something for everybody, but, I agree with you big time. I think most people would probably gravitate towards that new buy if it's available, but there's just great pricing right now also in the resale market, because of how difficult it is, with sales today, and the lack of velocity. Prices are just, they're getting really, really good on resales too. So it's hard to say. I would say there's just a lot of really great buying opportunities out there in this market.
You said technology was one of the 4 pillars in which your company stands for. Tell me how tech is actually enhancing, not replacing the human side of hospitality.
It's a great question. So we're really looking at AI. We're looking at robotics. I think everyone is today. A lot of people look at it and say, how do I take AI and make it do what someone's doing to where they're not needed? We have a different mentality. I'm a big believer that in hospitality specifically, you can't just make people go away. People want personalized experiences. People want to talk to a human. So, I don't envision a world where you have a bunch of robots serving people and, there's no human touch. I think that's really key in the type of product we like to do. So we're looking at ways that you can make humans more efficient. We talked briefly before we started, on AI for personal assistance, to help with meetings or scheduling. There's a lot of things like that where you could really automate. A great example is in graphic design. There's so many tools out there right now where you could have AI create a really nice image or a really nice piece of copy, and then we're enhancing it, maybe 40-50% based on what they started as a base. It's saving time. It's allowing that graphic designer to do 4 times the amount of work, as an example. So I feel that we're looking at more from a creation of efficiencies perspective than a full replacement of people. Yeah.
And I think it also has to do with life cycles, where you're at. Listen, I'm not a Gen Zer. I
Yeah.
went to a really cool place with a friend to grab a drink in the afternoon, and the wait staff was really pleasant. They're really nice to talk to. But this dinky technology in which you had to order your drinks off your phone and send it through and then wait for it to come back. And I couldn't even get what I wanted done the right way because there weren't enough options for me to do this.
Yeah.
I don't need to do the job of a waitress.
Yeah, exactly.
A Gen Zer probably would be happy to just go to a vending machine and get what they want and
Yep.
not talk to anybody and just be on their phone or their headphones the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't work for me.
Yeah.
So I think it also technology has to do with lifestyles, what you're used to, and how you can actually get people to absorb this new technology or adopt this new technology as well too.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that's it's preference. There's an age component to that as well. I think that there's lots of people in all different age ranges that love technology. But I laugh a little bit with what you're saying because I thought of my dad. He'll go to one of those like Korean barbecue restaurants where you cook your own food, and he'll be like, "Why am I paying to cook my own food?"
I know what you mean.
So I think there's certain people that they
I
want
can
that
just imagine
service.
your dad saying that too, by the
Oh
way.
my God, yeah, he'll go up to the manager and be like, "What the hell is this? Yeah, you guys should be paying me right now." But so I think that there's that mentality of I want that service, I want that personal touch, and I think there's a lot of people that just love to get things done and not have all that, and press a button and boom. So for me, it's funny because I would categorize myself more old school,
Me too.
but I'm also creating I've created a software company, so it's kind of a little goofy where I appreciate the old school mentality. I talk with my wife and kids all the time where it's like we don't love social media, we don't love all that type of stuff that technology brings. We like a little more good old fashioned, like let's go
Yeah.
outside and be in nature
Yeah,
type
yeah.
of thing. But I would say that there are a lot of benefits to technology, and there's a lot of things to where I believe it's not going away. So you got to embrace it to some extent and look at how it can enhance your life and your business. Yeah.
So how do you leverage all this data that you collect to improve your guest satisfaction and repeat stays?
We have a lot of tools. So we created one of our technologies we created is what's called a master data management system, because we're using just in hospitality and the hotel side with the residential resorts, we probably use 35 different systems, all collecting different types of data. Call center data is going to collect maybe a name, phone number, email, maybe some preferences we capture on the call. A PMS is going to collect completely different data, et cetera, et cetera. And so all these systems have touch points with a guest or a homeowner or whatever it is. And what the data management system does is it brings it all into one big data lake where it brings it together. And I'm able to take points of a customer, and bring it into one profile. So now if I know that I captured some preferences here and some things they liked over here, and they did a request yesterday for some towels, we have all that info and we could better service. I don't have to ask the same questions and be redundant with the guests and whatnot. I could just go and know exactly what their needs are and go service it.
I
So
love
it's
it.
spectacular.
So what tools and innovations are you most excited about in, let's say, the next 12 to 24 months?
Uh, so one that I'm really excited about that we've been doing, but I think it's really going back to our secret sauce is probably the biggest thing that we've done up to this point is we've created a distribution system, through both off the shelf and proprietary software where we could actually distribute a home product by the type. So imagine, you book a hotel room, you're booking a king room. There could be 20 king rooms behind that, that unit type. And when you get to the hotel, they're going to assign you to one of those king rooms. That's called booking a unit type. Whereas if you're booking on Airbnb, you're booking by the door is what we call it. Every house individually listed, and I'm getting that specific house I chose. We could take our inventory and we could do both ways simultaneously and automated, which no one else has really done that before. So that's one of the technologies I'm really excited about because it's allowed us to outperform the market by 200-300% everywhere we go. So I love that, love the results of it. But another one that we're doing that I'm really excited about, going back to the AI, is we're actually currently working with a partner to develop a voice AI that could it could help to provide better service levels. What a lot of people don't realize is that in the hospitality industry, like if you call a Marriott or a Hilton call center, they're not picking up 100% of calls, and they're definitely not picking them up in 60 seconds or less. Our standard is we want 100% of calls in 60 seconds or less. And if you're getting a lot of call volume, that becomes very difficult. So being able to utilize AI to create efficiencies, like I was talking about before, where the voice AIs today can answer the call. You don't even realize you're speaking to a robot, and it could really fulfill all your needs, without having to go to a human. Obviously, if you prefer that, you could go to that. But that's one of the technologies I'm excited about because, again, it just enhances our guest experience and it creates efficiencies for our agents. So they're not rushing off calls and having to rush other guests when they're on the calls with them. So that's a cool piece of technology we're developing.
Let's talk about new markets, market strategy, expansion.
Yeah.
You're all over the place. I
Yep.
don't even know how you keep up with your own life. I think you need like 6 assistants running around behind you
Yep.
all the time. So I'm going to teach you how to buy back your time, sir.
There we go. I look forward to it.
What markets are you most excited about in terms of where your company is going in its next phase?
So we're always looking to expand throughout Florida. Right now, we're really excited because we have some good expansion opportunities in North Florida, where I'm seeing between the St. Augustine and Jacksonville markets, there's a lot of properties we're looking at right now that I think are going to be really successful. We're also always looking in
Why
Miami.
Jacksonville?
I just think it's a great market. We've seen that if you look at South Florida, a lot of people are priced out, and a lot of the migration is going north. Central Florida has been a huge recipient of that over the last decade. But I would say that even Central Florida is kind of getting to that point where it's not for everybody anymore. And, North Florida is what I'm seeing is still more of an untapped area. There's a tremendous business base there. You look at Jacksonville, it's one of the best corporate base, areas of the country. But the home prices just really haven't caught up yet, and I think it's in that maturity phase where it's just ripe for that next big place for development. So that's a big area for us. We're looking at some luxury product in Miami that we're really excited about. We do a lot of Miami, obviously, with Miami World Center and other developments, so we want to continue to build off of that. But outside of the state of Florida, we're
And that would
also
be residential, just like beautiful towers like you do.
yeah,
Like,
big
okay.
condos and whatnot. Yep. And
Nice.
outside of the state, the two most biggest markets we're most excited about would be Texas and the Carolinas. We're doing a lot in North and South Carolina right now, both in the built to rent space, where we're renting houses long term, year or more. But we're also doing a good amount of resort product out there. There's 2 or 3 resorts we're currently either under development or we're going to be. And then in Texas, we're working with some developers that we're looking at multiple projects out there that we're really, really excited about. So I just look at all 3 of those states as very, very fast growing. There's been a ton of migration, especially since COVID, to those states, and the markets are just really ripe for growth and what we're doing. So very excited about this.
What are the trends that are shaping the future of residential resorts development?
So I would say one of the big trends, again, going back, is the financing component to it. The for what we do with commercialized product, where just to paint the picture, we're going in with the developer pre-development, and we're saying, and we're providing brand standards and a brand playbook of like, here's how many units you should have, here's the amenities you should have, the site plan, the legal document structure. We're helping to form really everything, so that the product is successful in the back end. So I would say that one of the bigger trends is positioning this type of product to be able to be a financing vehicle. And I was mentioning this a little bit earlier, but I want to give some more details. So we were looking at, as an example, developing a product in Miami and another one in Nashville. They're both condo towers. They're both north of 500-600 units, and each one of them had a capital stack requirement of over $400 million. So when you look at it, in Miami, you could use usable deposits. I could take a deposit from the sale of real estate and put it in as equity as part of my cap stack. In Nashville, which just changed, law went into place like a week ago that now you can do this and you could use deposits, but you couldn't previously. And so the peak equity in Nashville for this deal was north of 160 million, let's call it. Miami, it was, because of the deposits you could use, we project that our peak equity would be south of $80 million. So when you think about it, we're providing a vehicle, and I think this will be the trend in the market, that developers can get deals done, get deals financed, whether it's a condo or a mix with a hotel. And, you could still have it where it's just a feasible investment on the back end. Whereas up until now, there hasn't really been a commercially positioned short-term rental that you could do that with. And so I think that's the biggest trend I'm seeing is, I think less and less you're going to see traditional hotel without resi. And I think more and more you're going to see standalone resi that turns into hospitality or mixed with the hotel because of the capital, impacts that it
And we're
has.
seeing all of that actually in Miami as we speak.
It's
There's
huge.
so many branded lifestyle buildings, whether it's
Oh, it's everywhere.
Dolce Gabbana or Mercedes or Aston Martin
Yep.
or Bugatti or whatever it is, Versace or whatever the case may be, Armani and so on and so forth.
Yep.
But I think what's really interesting in addition to that is we're seeing towers go up that are short term in Miami, in Nashville, like
Yep.
Nativo, for example, as a perfect example. But I think what's really interesting, that if you don't mind me offering this as a piece of advice, I've seen this model specifically in the Toronto market, and it's so much more approachable, especially if you're going into a longer construction cycle, which is to be able to break down your deposits into 2.5% now.
Yeah. Yeah.
another 2.5% next month or 3 months from now, another 2.5%.
Yeah,
And
having it
it
almost like
becomes
a payment plan.
palatable.
Hmm.
Like anybody can do it.
Oh yeah,
You know
yeah.
what I mean?
We've been seeing a lot of that lately, for sure. That's a big trend in the market. I think it really helps with just getting buyers comfortable, and especially if you're selling pre-construction, or you're if a buyer's not seeing the reality of what's going on and it actually getting built. I find that being able to spoon feed on the deposit side is a lot
Correct.
easier to get that initial buy-in, so people aren't waiting until closer to the development cycle.
Especially when the majority of your buyers are all international buyers and
Yeah,
they're all subject to some
yeah.
foreign exchange that will affect how much deposit they're actually putting down.
Yeah, big time. I think that's a great recommendation. I love it. And we're definitely seeing that. And one thing I also want to go back to, you mentioned the Miami market. What's interesting in Miami, and I think that this is something, for the audience that keep an eye on, but a lot of these developers, they're doing branded resi, not for short term,
For long term.
just to raise the price of the sale and, provide a premium or whatnot. But the people that are positioning it for short term, they're not putting in the proper legal structure. They're not putting in the proper management. There's a lot of buildings that I think you're going to see in Miami that are not going to succeed the way they expect, and they're going to actually become more distressed in the future. So I would keep an eye on the condo market in Miami over the next 5 to 10 years, because I think you're going to have a lot of product that the developers just don't understand the business, and they think that you just kind of build it and they will come, and it's not that simple. So between that and between a lot of the legal issues a lot of these developers are going to get into based on the lack of understanding how to structure the documents, there's going to be some very interesting opportunities in Miami over the next 5 to 10 years with resales.
And I love your honesty when it comes to that because you really kind of tap into a lot of concerns a lot of people have. A lot of people want to jump into short-term vacation rental markets, and thank God these markets are outside of Orlando, because I think with Disney's push and just
Yeah.
the city's position on it, it's here to stay. But there's a lot of other cities that have changed their zoning, their
Oh yeah.
regulation, and so on and so forth, and it's really kind of dampened those investors who are looking to turn a profit with this specific asset class. Do you have any plans to expand internationally? And if so,
Yeah.
do you have any regions in mind that you're excited about?
Yeah, the first one we would go to would be the Caribbean, because of the proximity, and it's just a great travel market. And this vacation home resort product has actually been somewhat prevalent in the Caribbean, for a good amount of time. I would say that was one of the first adapters, to this type of product. So great market there. With some of our brands, a lot of our brands have big following in Europe. So I could definitely see that being a market that we'll be expanding into very quickly. And I would say also, the Asian market, especially with some of our brands like Jack Nicholas, very popular. A lot of people don't realize he's actually more popular in the Asian market than he is in the United States.
Yeah.
So we're very open to a lot of international markets. A lot of people don't realize this, but we have been doing distribution now for a few years for properties that are international, where they have resi. People don't know they have resi, and they put it on our platform for awareness and booking. So we've been doing that now for 3-4 years. We probably have about 60 international properties that we do that with. So I would say we're kind of international already, but we're going to be looking to break into that in a much bigger way over the next few years.
I love it. We talked about branding, we talked about partnerships, collaboration, and
Yep.
as we said in the beginning of this conversation, the world that we live in, other than relationships, the other currency is collaboration, not competition.
Yeah.
What makes a great brand partner in your eyes?
So a great brand partner, I would say number one, and I got to be careful with that one, because we have some great brand partners and others that we would wish we could work a little bit better with. But
We won't mention the names.
no names. Yeah,
You know who you are.
we love all of them. We just want a little bit more collaboration, as you stated. But I would say willingness to collaborate. Lack of ego. We don't pretend to know everything. And I think that nobody does. And I think that with any partnership, every side of the partnership is bringing in value. They're bringing in something that the other side doesn't bring. So I think acknowledging that, putting the egos aside and saying, hey, we're going to collaborate about things that I'm comfortable with, maybe you're not, vice versa, but the end result is going to be something that's collectively stronger. So I would say that willingness and lack of ego is key with a brand partner, but also, they have to come with, the expertise, with the things that we'd be looking for from that side of the partnership. Typically when we partner with brands, great IP, great marketing capabilities, great playbooks on how to do these type of products or whatnot. Not necessarily resi, but a footprint for hotel that we could then translate to resi.
Which is why you did a Margaritaville.
Exactly. They had a great brand, great IP. They did a great product in Hollywood, which we were one of the initial investors. And so that created a footprint for Orlando where it was just, how do we add on to it and make it even better, with the resi. So those would be some of the major components. And I think, it's simple. I'm not like throwing out there anything that's rocket science, but I just think, people have to be willing to receive what others are offering. And if not, then it creates a really difficult partnership. If I'm sitting there and I put the wall up and I don't want to listen, or I don't want to, feel that the partner could bring something of value, it's not going to go very far. So I feel like it's as simple as that. You just have to have the right people, and you got to work with people you actually enjoy being around.
Absolutely.
There's too many people, you hear it all the time, but it's real. If you get a bad partner that's just not a good person or not someone that you enjoy working with, it makes it so much harder. So I would just recommend to anybody, know who you're getting in bed with, know who you're aligning with or whatnot, and make sure that someone you actually, you care about and you want to succeed with.
Talking about great partnerships, what were some of the breakthrough moments working with the Margaritas of the world, the Hard Rocks of the world?
Yeah. With Margaritaville, excuse me, they've been an amazing brand partner. Obviously with any brand, we're going to have, bumps along the road. I think if you ask Margaritaville, they would say that early on, the partnership wasn't as strong as it is today. But just to give you an example of some of the amazing things we've had with them, when we first started with them, they didn't have these big box hotels and all the firepower they have today. They were still developing their tech stack. They were hiring people, to really be their corporate backbone infrastructure. And we were having to really guide them early on, I think, on a lot of things that today they're like a rocket ship and they have it all built in-house. So that was one of the cool things that we got to see with that brand, is the evolution, and how they've strengthened. I'm blown away with what they've done, especially on the distribution side. It's night and day compared to when we started with them. They're very powerful now on that. And, just the brand following. It's absolutely
brand
amazing.
With all their parrot heads as well, too. That
incredible.
Is second to none.
Incredible loyalty. So I just, seeing different things that the brands are able to do and, seeing them grow, it's been really fun, to experience that.
So as an entrepreneur, or as somebody who's gone through the hardships of navigating through these uncharted waters, how do you ensure this perfect alignment, or just an alignment between your values and these co-brands?
Yeah. It's never going to be perfect. So I think, you have to kind of, as an entrepreneur, you have to get perfection out of your head as much as we all want it. But I think it's just every day coming into the partnership and saying, how do I make it better today? How do I add value? And show the partnership that, that we're here to create mutual success, going back to, our culture. I think if you have that mentality, then you're going to have a really successful partnership, and it's going to be fun.
Are there any dream partnerships or IPs that you would love to bring into your ecosystem?
Yeah, hopefully, he hears this. I would love to partner. He's kind of polarizing right now, but I'd love to partner with SpaceX and Elon Musk. I would love to put a resort on the moon or something like that, or on Mars, or even just do things in in the world, right? That is more utilizing a IP that's more exploratory, more science, more space, like fun things like that, technology. I could see that being something that someone hasn't really done. And we have big vision. So I'd love to be the first one to do a resort outside of the world with them. That'd be pretty cool.
You know what? I have to say, I have goosebumps, and I'm a little bit blown away, because when you talk about big vision, that's...
We have no lack of vision. Yeah.
No pun intended. You know what I mean? Like, you don't even... sometimes you think geographically, you think locally, you think regionally, you think within your own country or internationally. This is on a completely other level.
We think big, and I mean, but how cool would it be, right? Even if you're on Earth, right, and you have a resort where you just think of all the technology that this guy's company has built, with stuff that you could experience transportation wise, and having houses with all the solar stuff, and just incorporating fun experiences into that's more science based, or just fun based. I could be weird, but my kids love that type of stuff. They're intrigued by that, by space, by different things that's more technology and futuristic. And so I just think being in the cutting edge of of technology and hospitality, and combining those two, would be really fun.
Elon, if you're listening to this, we have a great opportunity waiting for you anywhere in this universe.
Yes, we're ready to go. Let us know.
Let's talk about family, legacy, and more importantly, your incredible personal insight. This interview has been a privilege for me.
It's
It's
mutual.
been a gift in many ways.
Thank you so
And
much.
what you and your brothers have built together is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. We're blessed.
What's the dynamic really look like?
Between my brothers and I. So absolutely blessed to have the brothers that I have. I'm the oldest of three. We're all 2 years apart, and we're all very complementary to each other, which is beautiful. A lot of families do not work well together. Um, it was almost immediate when we started our careers and we started our business together that we kind of naturally formed our lanes of what we're good at. And obviously there was a lot of communication and whatnot, but we all went down different paths that were complementary to each other and respectful to each other. So when you look back, I mean, we've been working together now for 15 years. We've had our disagreements, we've had our moments, but I would say 99% of the time we have each other's back. We're winning together, we're losing together, we're respecting each other, and it's just an amazing dynamic. Absolutely incredible. I could not ask for better partners. I can't say enough about my brothers. I'm blessed to have them as my partners and family, obviously.
You're a lucky man.
Yes, I am.
What core values have you learned through your journey that you're making sure that you pass down to your children?
Respect and loyalty. I'm huge on that. Going back to the family values. I mean, parents have been married again for 50 years. My grandparents, prior to that, they passed, but they were married for over 75 years. So I think naturally, when I think of relationships, whether it be business, personal, loyalty is key. We're huge on that, and that's something I definitely want to pass on to my kids. Is that component? Hard work, passion. There's a different mentality, I would say, in youth today, where I feel like work isn't valued as much. And similar to what my father did for me, I want them to know that the work you put in, you're going to get back. You're going to get it back in some way. It doesn't mean that you're going to get self gratification, but maybe you're going to do something that impacts the world, impacts others. Just work hard. Earn what you get. I think is something I really want to pass down. And just passion. If you're going to do something, do it with passion, do it right, put every ounce of your being into it, or why do it? You know what I'm saying? Just don't do it if you don't want to put everything into it and do it right. So those would definitely be values I want to pass down.
What keeps you grounded?
Family, I would say family. Just watching my father. I'll give a great example with my dad. My dad, as I mentioned, he came from nothing. Built an amazing business. He's one of the top entrepreneurs, developers in the country. And you look at him, I mean, he's humble. He's respectful to everybody. It doesn't matter who you are. He's going to have time for you. He's going to talk to you just like a human being. And there's so many people that, they let success or they let things get to their head and it changes who they are. Just watching my parents, watching, my family, my friends be able to go through those scenarios and, stay humble, I think was really just a great, it was great mentoring for me. It was just great examples of how I want it to be.
What legacy do you want to leave behind, not just in business, but in life?
So, yeah, I'll hit on both sides. I think from a business perspective, I had two moments in my life that kind of shaped the legacy I wanted to live. There was a show actually back in the day, Men Who Built America, and there was one of the people that they did a documentary on the show. This was gentlemen back in like the 1900s, the Rockefellers, those type of guys, and one of the entrepreneurs, their father was very successful, and he took it to the next level and became one of the most successful people in the world, and hearing that story, it kind of motivated me. Like, again, going back to how I was raised and that mentality, create your own name. I was born with a platform where a lot of people aren't, right? I was blessed to have that, but never taken that for granted. And so I want to create a legacy where, again, we could take the family and what the family's built and put it somewhere even higher. I don't want to leave it at the same level or lower than where it started. So that's key to me, is being able to do that. And the second scenario that really got that mentality, I was actually, because again of the platform, some of the blessings that I had early on in high school, I was able to do a summer internship program where I went to Wharton Business School with a lot of other wealthy family kids or whatnot, and we did a whole summer course on business and entrepreneurship and how to be successful. And it was amazing. The first day, first class, one of the top professors comes in talking to all of us. He said, listen, all of you come from, successful backgrounds. Your families have done great things. Look around, because out of all of you guys in the room, the statistics say that 9 out of 10 of you guys are going to not succeed, not be successful, or not have anywhere near the success of your family. And I heard that. I'm like, oh, hell no, I'm not going to be that 9 out of 10. I'm going to be that 1. And so moments like that, I think, shape who you want to be and the legacy you want to be, you want to leave behind. And from a business perspective, I want to leave our family business in a place that was better than where it was received, and really take it to another level. On the family side and on the personal side, I want to be, again, a great husband, a great father. I want to provide all those values to my kids that I mentioned before. But I also want to, I want to inspire people. I want to be a mentor to youth. I love impacting youth. Every charitable thing that we do is usually revolving around young people, because there's just so many people out there that, they're come from a bad household, or, whatever it is, they don't have the proper mentorship. And I find that that's one of the key things that brings people to success, whether it be business success or happiness, is just having people that could help guide you. And so I'm just a huge believer in that. Okay. And, I was also dealt with something at an early age where at 11 years old, I was diagnosed with something called Crohn's disease. And that helped to really form me, where that was a scary time. You're 11, you're like, I don't even know what this is. Is it going to kill me? What's going to happen? And again, I look back and I had great mentors, my parents, my support system. At that time, that turned me into a stronger person, because I was dealt with a challenge, and it was all about, well, how do you overcome it? And I had that mentality of, let's go beat this thing and take it to a place where it's positive. And so just, from my experiences, those are the type of things I want to be able to do for other people, is when people are down, especially young people, how do you get them up? How do you get them into a place where they know that they can do whatever they want to do and succeed at it? So that's the legacy I want to leave.
It's so funny you say that, because in the last 18 months, metaphorically, I saw what the other side looks like. Yeah. And knowing what the other side looks like, it's honestly the despair that you live in, not doing what you ought to do, is the regret you're going to end up living with for the rest of your life.
So true. Yep. And it happens to everybody. It's I think everyone will have those moments, but again, how do you pull people out of that? Everyone needs somebody every once in a while to help them, elevate and get to that next level. So that's what I want to be known for, is helping people reach where they want to go.
What would the 10-year-old version of Nick think of the man you've become?
I don't think you would recognize him. I was a crazy 10-year-old. I wouldn't say I was too crazy. I was probably like any young boy, with a lot of energy and driving my parents crazy all the time. I was not someone that did the best in school. I wasn't bad at school, but I always felt in school I wasn't necessarily challenged. And I'm the type of person, if I'm not challenged, it's hard for me to get motivated. So I would say that, if the 10-year-old version saw me, I would think that hopefully it would give me a pat on the back, say, okay, you did a good job maturing and growing up. But I don't think the 10-year-old me would recognize me today. I've become a very different human being.
We all go through challenging times in our life. Yeah. And there's a lot of times where we're trying to create a new path, forge a new way, learn a new skill. Yeah. And I heard something that really struck a chord yesterday. I've been trying to learn this course for, the last year. And every time I come to it, it's so boring. It's so monotonous. And I had to change my perspective. And I heard this quote yesterday, and it says, the hardest things in life are often met because the first step is not small enough. And it really changed my perspective on how I started to look at things. Yeah. And I've heard so many wonderful things about you. Really am compelled to ask this question. Please. What are you most proud of that nobody sees?
What am I most proud of that no one sees? I would probably say, that's a great question. I got to think about that one a little bit. But, for me, it's kind of, I would say the reason why I'm having a little bit of trouble thinking about it is because I live in a world where my doors are typically always open, whether it be career wise, I'm a very open book type of person. In my personal life, I have kids running around all day. I don't get much privacy from that perspective. So there's very few things that people don't see about me. But I would probably just say, probably the things that I do behind the scenes that people don't necessarily, again, from a work perspective and a personal perspective, like my routine of doing my work, versus meeting with others or doing my personal stuff happens at like, 10 to 2 in the morning. Workout,
For me, it's 4 to 6 or
yeah,
7 or whatever it is.
I'm not a morning guy. I can't function at 4 for some reason. But I would say it's those type of things. The stuff that I'm doing to prepare for the next day. After hours, so that I'm not taking the time during the day where I could be working with people. And impacting people the way that I mentioned, or the things I'll be doing for planning for the family, or cooking meals or something like that to prepare and get ahead for the week. I mean, I would say those are the things I guess that people wouldn't see is the preparation behind the scenes to try to be great, in family and in business, and just do the right thing.
What's the moment that changed the entire trajectory of your life?
Yeah, so I would say that moment came for me in college. I mentioned that I wasn't the scholar, I wasn't the person that got the straight A's, and I had my biggest health issue back then, where my sophomore year, when I was really going into the business school, my Crohn's was really acting up. I missed an entire semester. I appealed with the school because it happened a couple weeks into the semester. I said, hey, I don't want this to affect me. They didn't register it as absences because it was too many days, and they weren't allowing medical leave. So in essence, I missed a lot of courses. I missed a lot of tests, and I failed every single class that semester. Because I wasn't there. It dropped my GPA. It got me, I wasn't eligible now for the business school. I was sitting there like, oh my God, all the things I want to do. I need a degree. I need to be able to at least show that I earned that. And that was a moment where I was saying to myself, man, this isn't fair. My health derailed, but yada, yada. But that was a moment that really, again, I think it changed the trajectory where, I buckled down. I obviously got back the health wise, which was a major game changer in my life, where I really focused on the health component of it. But then, doubled down on everything I was trying to do. I went back, to FSU. I changed my major to economics and sociology. Best thing I ever did. Got into a college where I felt welcomed. I felt like I could succeed. Killed it the rest of college. And it was funny as heck, but the thing that I would say was most life-changing at that time, and what motivated me the most, was I got a dog. And it was the first time in my life that I had something that was dependent on me, that I needed to work for something more than just myself, and it sounds crazy, whatever, that something like that could change your life. But I was at a place where I was sick. I felt like I was failing. I felt like I wasn't going anywhere. And within a couple month period of time, I had a purpose. I had something I was responsible for. I had motivation. I got everything back on track. And I just never looked back from there.
Everything starts with a much bigger why.
Yeah, exactly right. Mm-hmm.
Everything starts with a much bigger why.
Yep.
Let's have some fun.
Let's do it.
We're going to do a rapid fire round.
All right, let's do it. Let's go.
What's your love language, and how does it show up in your life?
Love language. I love verbal acknowledgments of care. I think that's awesome. I'm a big believer in communication, just being able to talk and be on the same page about how you're feeling and stuff like that. So
you do it so well, actually.
Thank you.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Best piece of advice I ever received was to go into the food and beverage business. I was told by multiple mentors that you could learn almost anything about any business from that, that industry. And I would say that's the truest thing. I mean, you learn operations, you learn people, HR, accounting, site selection, real estate, because if you're owning a restaurant, you got to pick the right site, lease negotiation, contract negotiation. I mean, you can go on and on. That advice, I'm blessed to have that, because it really catapulted my career.
And I really feel like if you have a youngin that's trying to get into the workforce, it's definitely an industry that they need to be exposed to, because your social skills in terms of how you cater to working with people and meeting people and interacting.
So important.
So important.
Yeah. And you meet different personalities. I mean, to your point, I don't think there's any better way to grow a career than to start there and all the learnings you get out of it. And what's amazing now is it's kind of an underserved market. A lot of young people aren't going into the space. And, so I think that if you're a young person with a lot of ambition and passion, you're going to have less competition than you did back in the day. You'll have a lot more opportunity to succeed.
What's the worst piece of advice you've ever received?
Worst piece of advice I ever received. So I would say it's not a specific one-liner type of thing, but, there were phases in our career when we were growing the company where we were guided to go into too many things or to diversify a little bit too much. And I would say that those were some of the areas where, I had mentors that would give me guidance, and, I'm not blaming them because
Yeah.
I ultimately made the decision. But I would say that I've learned in a big way to stay laser focused on the core, and, obviously think entrepreneurially, think about new ways to grow, but at the same time, stay very tight and not get over your skis.
What was that one habit that changed your whole life?
One habit, um, I would say, and it's more of a personal answer, but I would say, the food side, for me with a digestion, disease or whatnot. I had to literally, completely remap everything that I eat, everything I do, my whole lifestyle, working out, etc. That changed my entire life, because I was just at a point where, mentally and physically I wasn't really there, and I wasn't who I wanted to be. So I would say that was probably the biggest thing for me was, just the health aspect, and, that component of the lifestyle.
I love this question because it really goes to show who your inspirational people are, who inspires you, who motivates you. If you could have dinner with three people, dead or alive, who would they be and why?
Um, I would probably choose my grandparents who passed away. Just to be able to talk to them again.
I love that.
It's an emotional answer. I lost my one grandpa when I was 7 years old, so I didn't get much time to know him. It would be great to be able to revisit that. And then my other, my father's parents passed away pretty recently. They lived very long, but I mean, talk about like amazing people. They were married 75 plus years. I don't think they, in the last 50 years, spent like a minute away from each other. They were the typical old Italian grandparents that, they went to the same deli every day and the same this and that. And they were just great people, and just being able to spend time with them again would be amazing.
If your life was a headline,
Hmm.
what would it say today?
Oh, man. If my life was a headline, what would it say today? I would say, maybe, I'm thinking of some different ones. One that popped into my head was controlled chaos, because between
It's actually one of my favorite concepts.
yeah, I
I
mean,
don't know if you know this or not, but there's
no.
a painting by Kandinsky
Uh-huh.
that's two paintings back to back,
Yeah.
and it's hung on a chain or a string, and when you flip it, you'll see control chaos.
I love
Control
it.
chaos.
Oh, that's awesome. That's the first thing that come into mind. And I don't want to make it sound like it's just a lot of chaos, because it's beautiful.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think anytime you have, your CEO, theoretically we're overseeing 7 different businesses, and then, go home to 4 kids that are all under the age of 8. It's a lot of craziness going on. So, being able to control that and keep it all manageable or whatnot, I would say that's probably the headline right there.
What's Nick Falcone's definition of living well?
Uh, Simple. I want to be able to spend time with family. I want to be able to focus on health, not just my health, but family's health, have fun, and be challenged. I think challenge both personally and professionally. I'm not the type of person that high maintenance, need a lot of different things. I don't really care about possessions or anything like that. I'm more about, the time I spend with people, and, just being able to be around the right people, good people that, you want to be with, and, being able to have an amazing time. And again, I think going back to just mentoring, and being there for others, that's really key for me.
I really hate to have to end this. I know I can go on forever, and I'm
Me
just trying to
too.
be mindful of your time.
No, this has been an absolute pleasure. I really appreciate all the time.
Finish the sentence.
Uh-huh.
At the end of the day,
Hmm.
I want to be remembered as.
At the end of the day, I would like to be remembered as someone that was always there for others. Always there to support, always there to mentor, always there to, through the good times and the bad times, and someone that was consistently there for people that are in my life.
So beautifully said.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for being a guest on my show.
I really appreciate having me. Thank you so much. I'm sorry it took so long, but I'm
No,
happy we finally got here.
we made it happen. And
Yes,
I'm
sir.
going to invite you again, so you better show
Please,
up next
yeah.
time.
I look forward to that. That'd be
Ladies
great.
and gentlemen, Dawood Bedrosian, your host of Real Sense Now. It's been an absolute pleasure to have Nick Falcone with me today. I can't wait to do great stuff, more stuff with you, and see what
look forward to
other
it.
adventures we can create together.
Let's have some fun.
Let's
Appreciate
do
you.
it.
Yeah, man.
Pleasure.
If you love powerful stories, expert advice, and conversations that actually make sense, you're in the right place. Hit that subscribe button and join us every week for more inspiring episodes just like this one.